Propaganda is not thrown directly in the eyes, but skillfully mixed with the reality for better assimilation by the audience.
When some part of the world's cinematography is not released on Russian screens, this niche is occupied by Russian state with the direction necessary for the authorities.
Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Media Center, an NGO Euro-Atlantic Force, and I'm your host, Myroslava Yeremkiv. Culture is outside of politics. This thesis is actively used to justify the consumption of Russian cultural products. However, it is mass culture that often becomes a platform for the creation of new meanings that are beneficial to the Kremlin, with the help of which public opinion is manipulated. Continuing the Soviet tradition, cinema is one of the most propagandistic branches of culture. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how Russian cinematography serves as a tool of aggression against Ukraine, and explore the functions cinema fulfills within the Russian Federation's propaganda machine. If you want to learn more about this subject, please continue watching this video and subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss our videos in the future. Propaganda thrives on simplification and emotional appeal, which Russian directors actively create. In it, all Russians are good and honest, and Ukrainian soldiers are criminals. And this narrative completely satisfies the customer, the Kremlin, and the Russians are forced to consume it. Russian films methodically use stereotypes to dehumanize Ukrainians and the rest of non-Russians. In this way, cinema propaganda distorts reality and imposes specific ideas on viewers who begin to believe in this alternative reality. Anastasiia Ratieieva, analyst at Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group, will tell us more about key propaganda narratives in modern Russian cinema that justify Russian invasion of Ukraine.
The main messages of modern Russian cinema can be singled out on the basis of one example. In February of this year, the documentary film festival Time of Heroes was held in Moscow and several Russian cities. Simultaneously with the Russian shows, the festival took place in 50 countries of the world and the quasi-states of South Ossetia, created by the occupation authorities of the Russian Federation. Our cinema halls are the territory of truth, the motto of the festival, and this is how the festival positions itself and speaks to the audience from this position. It is worth starting with the fact that all these films are pseudo-documentaries, since the accents and meanings invested in them reflect the reality constructed by Kremlin propaganda. Propaganda uses documentaries to put its narratives on par with the facts. These films claim and are perceived to be objective because they naturally reflect reality. And to the narratives. The first and key narrative that sounds in almost all movies is that the armed forces of Ukraine are firing at the civilian population. In the film about Horlivka communal service workers, the main characters live and work in a city that was mined and destroyed by armed forces of Ukraine. In another film, the film about the investigation of spontaneous burials, they are looking for lost from Ukrainian mines and shells. And often filmmakers place absurd lies in the background. Propaganda is not thrown directly in the eyes, but skillfully mixed with the reality for better assimilation by the audience. For example, in a film about two volunteers who was distributing food at one of the frontline locations, attention is focused not on them, but on the fact that the distribution location was hit by a HIMARS missile. Another narrative is the demonization of Ukraine. In my opinion, this festival is a very vivid example because there are two films that express the complete absurdity of Russian propaganda. First film, called Armed barons of Ukraine, in which the authors investigate and smuggling of weapons supplied by the West to Ukraine to hotspots around the world. The second film, Ukraine Children for Sale, this film promises viewers evidence of black schemes to sell Ukrainian babies to wealthy pedophiles in UK. However, of course, not just about examples. The demonization of Ukraine is in many films. It is expressed in different forms. Ukrainians in these films are Nazis, antichrists who destroy faith, and, of course, terrorists. Another narrative is the war as an antidote to derussification. This narrative combines the cultural component and the issue of integration of the occupied territories. The drama theater in Mariupol, which was destroyed by a Russian rocket, is called in one of these films as a symbol of what the city sacrificed for the sake of liberation. After the capture of the city by the troops of the Russian Federation, the theater returns to the historical name Russian and puts on plays in the native language. Another film that carries this message of the war as an antidote to derussification. This film is about military pilots from Crimea who, after the collapse of the USSR, refused to take the oath because they did not want to serve Ukraine, and about their return to the peninsula after its annexation by the Russian Federation.
The main institution financing cinema in the Russian Federation are the Ministry of Culture, the Film Fund, and the Internet Development Institute. In general, the budget for content creation from these bodies for 2023-2025 reaches $1 billion American dollars. In addition, in June 2022, a narrowly focused fund for the support of military patriotic cinema was created, headed by the Minister of Defense of the Russian Federation. State support for cinema in the Russian Federation is based on criteria that transform the normal procedure of funding culture into a process of creating propaganda. Among the priority topics of the Ministry of Culture for 2023 were Russia's peacekeeping mission, degradation of Europe, Ukraine as a historical region of the Russian Federation, and neo-colonial policy of the countries of the Anglo-Saxon world. Analyst at Hybrid Warfare Analytical Group Anton Khimyak will elaborate more on this.
Russian cinema has been using propaganda to discredit Ukraine and Ukrainians for a long time. Regarding tolls, it is worthy successor of the Soviet school of propaganda. One of the most remembering and recognizable cases of chauvinism towards Ukraine in Russian cinema is probably the movie Brother 2 or Brat 2. The second part of this movie was released in 2000. Even though in the first part of this series, one of the soundtracks was the song of the Ukrainian band Okan Elzy, in the second part, Ukrainian characters are presented as a very unfavorable, in this case, as criminals and mafia, and hostile to Russians. Moreover, when the characters confront the heroes, the Russians justify their cruel treatment with some historical facts like Second World War or Crimean War. In the future, Russian film propaganda not only developed this toolkit adapting its narratives to such scenarios. This was repeated in TV series and movies, especially in historical patriotic film, which the Russian authorities consider the primary, almost fundamental tool for fostering nationalism in children. Most of these historical and patriotic films tell stories about World War II and the transfer of the main characters in time, like a time-traveling adventure, but Ukrainian ones are always negative in these films. In 2012, the film Match was released about so-called death match between Ukrainian football players and German occupiers. This film not only manipulates historical facts, but also exposes all the characters portrayed as negative if they are speaking in Ukrainian and positive if they are Russian speakers. So in 2014, the head of the state cinema of Ukraine said, now it will be incorrect to show on Ukrainian TV channels those Russian films that contain open propaganda, such as glorification of Russia's power structures, military, and Russia itself. This was caused by both by the annexation of Crimea and hybrid aggression in Donbass, which sincerely support actions of the Kremlin. Sufficiently broad restrictions on showing Russian films products began to appear at this time. For example, in 2014, a film permitted with the narrative of Russian Crimea called Russian Character was released. With the beginning of this full-scale invasion, the situation of the epic of propaganda cinema not only continued but also gained momentum. We can also mention a propaganda film about a Belgian violinist called Witness, and many other films that also received funding from the Russian Ministry of Culture or other funding programs directly or indirectly from the Russian government. So therefore, when some part of the world's cinematography is not released on Russian screens, this niche is occupied by Russian state with the direction necessary for the authorities. In this way, the Russian regime formed the filmed format of almost every disinformation narrative.
You've been watching a special project by Ukraine Media Center and Euro-Atlantic course dedicated to the Russian-Ukrainian war, Ukraine in Flames. In the description under this video, you can find information on how you can help Ukraine fight Russian aggression. If you find our work useful, please like and share this video. Slava Ukraini!